Inclusive learning plays a key role in UTHSC educational settings. The mission of the University of Tennessee Health Science Center is to improve the health and well-being of Tennesseans and the global community by fostering integrated, collaborative, and inclusive education, research, scientific discovery, clinical care, and public service. To find out what inclusive learning looks like, the Teaching and Learning Center interviewed faculty about their inclusive education practices. We asked them, what is inclusive learning? How do you build an inclusive climate? And what are some inclusive teaching strategies you use?
I think of inclusive learning as something that is very proactive. So intentionally designing a course and a course environment so that it works for all learners, it creates an accepting environment, and it brings in a diversity of perspectives, a diversity of images, and so on, so that that environment in and of itself really teaches and allows for learning.
Oftentimes as educators, if we're really honest, we like to take the intellectual domain of our classrooms. We like to take up the space. And what that means is for many students, especially students who are used to being silenced, marginalized, and tokenized in our university spaces, those spaces are not safe, warming, affirming, or even allowing them to really share their lived experiences that we know augment the learning environments for all of our students. And so inclusive learning environments are co-creative because they really allow all of us, educators, students, and others, to flourish.
Inclusive learning involves creating an environment where medical students, as well as residents, are engaged in clinical care in a way that is meaningful to them. It also involves making sure that they are allowed to explore their own professional identity formation to become the clinicians that they desire to be in the future.
First and foremost, to create an inclusive learning environment, we have to make sure that the learners have safe, inclusive learning spaces. No matter what their educational attainment is, I make sure that the learners know that they are welcome in my classroom and at the patient's bedside. I set clear goals and objectives for the learners, and I'm also very transparent about feedback and evaluation. This way, the learners and the students know what to expect during their educational experience.
Another factor that I think is very important in fostering an inclusive climate is for the students to get to know me. I share stories about me, my passions, my background, my personal and professional experiences, the challenges that I have faced, the setbacks that I've had and overcame. I hope this helps the students to view me as approachable. Dr. B is approachable, because being approachable and available is extremely important in the teacher-students relationship, and is especially so for those of us who teach in the P1 year, when finding their academic and social footing in the new environment presents a challenge for many of our students. And I strive to project myself as someone who is there for the students when they have issues, who is approachable. Dr. B is someone whom they can talk to.
So making sure that I am there for the students and I'm there for myself, and showing and role modeling how I'm there, finding ways to play at work, finding days of connection and making the environment one that they are empowered to feel safe and brave, and then trying to make sure that while we don't have control over the environment, whatever we can control that, make the climate always sunny. And I try to be not a thermometer, but a thermostat to make that climate sunny.
Concrete teaching strategies that I use to create an inclusive learning environment in the classroom is making sure that the class resources are available, not only for purchase, but also for free through the library and Clinical Key. I also use the Name Coach feature within our learning management software to allow the students to record pronunciations of their names in the way that they would like them to be pronounced, so that I can use that way to address them. And lastly, in the laboratory sessions for our course, and also outside of the course in the hallways and when I run into students, I always make sure to try to say their name and say hello to them and make sure that they know, I remember them and that they're part of my course.
My job as a faculty member at the College of Dentistry allows me to work with the students mainly from a clinical perspective. In our inclusive environment, it is extremely important that the students become familiar with what it means to be connected with their patients and with one another, to be intentional about developing relationships. I often teach my students to look beyond the paperwork and the patient's immediate needs and to see the person for who they are. We once had a patient that was reluctant to come in for care. The student that I was working with tried to get the patient to come in on a number of different occasions and was unsuccessful. I encouraged my student to give him one more chance, and when he did, the patient showed up, and we then realized that he was wheelchair bound. He was disabled. From that point on, it was a good day. It was a good appointment. The patient was able to connect with my student and the student with my patient. At the end of the day, the patient no longer felt insecure about that initial meeting. And from that point on, came to all of his appointments on time, and we completed his treatment successfully. Sometimes we're unaware of the processes or the circumstances that some of the patients have to go through to come in to see us. And it's important that we really try hard to make these connections, which ultimately contribute to the patient having their needs met in an equitable manner. My student was able to share this story with his classmates, and we all learned a great deal from this experience.
The Teaching and Learning Center encourages instructors to use inclusive learning practices. If you are interested in learning more, please contact the TLC for an appointment with an instructional consultant. Thank you for watching.